Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming together to immerse ourselves in this rich body of wisdom we call Torah. We are going to be reading this week's Torah portion, which is Ki Tisa, which is found in the book of Exodus, beginning with chapter 30, verse 11. We'll read through the English translation of our portion. I'll share with you a focused study about it, and then we'll have our collective and collaborative conversation about it. If you'd like to go ahead and unmute together, we can recite a blessing giving thanks for the opportunity of this moment. Baruch
Baruch
atah Adonai
Adonai
Eloheinu
Eloheinu
melech
melech
haolam
haolam
asher
asher
kidshanu
kidshanu
b'mitzvotav
b'mitzvotav
v'tzivanu
v'tzivanu
la'asot
la'asot
divrei
divrei
Torah.
Torah.
Amen.
Thank you, God, for the opportunity of immersing ourselves in words, deeds, and relationships of Torah. I'll share with you the opening verses of our Torah portion, and then I'll invite others to have an opportunity to read as well. Book of Exodus, chapter 30, verse 11. God spoke to Moses, saying, "When you take a census of the Israelite people, according to their enrollment, each shall pay Adonai a ransom for himself on being enrolled, that no plague may come upon them through their being enrolled. This is what everyone who is entered in the record shall pay: a half shekel by the sanctuary weight, 20 gerahs to the shekel, a half shekel as an offering to God. Everyone who is entered in the records from the age of 20 years up shall give God's offering. The rich shall pay no more, and the poor shall not pay less than half a shekel when giving God's offering as expiation for your persons. You shall take the expiation money from the Israelites and assign it to the service of the tent of meeting. It shall serve the Israelites as a reminder before God, as expiation for your persons." Richard, would you like to read?
Yes, thank you, Rabbi. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Make a laver of copper and a stand of copper for it, for washing, and place it between the tent of meeting and the altar. Put water in it, and let Aaron and his sons wash their hands and feet in water drawn from it. When they enter the tent of meeting, they shall wash with water, that they may not die, or when they approach the altar to serve, to turn into smoke an offering by fire to the Lord. They shall wash their hands and feet, that they may not die. It shall be a law for all time for them, for him and his offspring throughout the ages." The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Next, take choice spices, 500 weight of solidified myrrh, half as much, 250, of fragrant cinnamon, 250 aromatic cane, 500 by the sanctuary weight of cassia and hin of olive oil. Make of this a sacred anointing oil, a compound of ingredients expertly blended to serve as sacred anointing oil. With it, anoint the tent of meeting, the ark of the pact, the table and all its utensils, the lampstand and all its fittings, the altar of incense, the altar of burnt offering and all its utensils, and the laver and its stand. Thus you shall consecrate them so that they may be most holy. Whatever touches them shall be consecrated. You shall also anoint Aaron and his sons, consecrating them to serve me as priests."
Thank you, Richard. Steve, would you like to continue there or at verse 31? And you'll need to unmute.
Sure. Thank you. Verse 31, "And speak to the Israelite people as follows. This shall be an anointing oil sacred to me throughout the ages. It must not be rubbed on any person's body, and you must not make anything like it in the same proportions. It is sacred to be held sacred by you. Whoever compounds its like or puts any of it on a layman shall be cut off from his kin. And the Lord said to Moses, take the herbs, stacte, ankia, and galbanum, these herbs together with pure frankincense. Let there be an equal part of each. Make them into incense, a compound expertly blended, refined, pure, sacred. Beat some of it into powder and put some before the pact in the tent of meeting, where I will meet with you. It shall be most holy to you. But when you make this incense, you must not make any in the same proportions for yourselves. It shall be held by you sacred to the Lord. Whoever makes any like it, to smell of it, shall be cut off from his kin. The Lord spoke to Moses, see, I have singled out by name Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, and the tribe of Judah. I have endowed him with a divine spirit of skill, ability, and knowledge in every kind of craft, to make designs for work in gold, silver, copper, to cut stones, setting, and to carve wood, to work in every kind of craft. Moreover, I have assigned to him Oholiab, son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, and I have also granted skill to all those who are skillful, and they make everything that I have commanded you: the tent of meeting, the ark for the pact, and the cover upon it, and all the furnishings of the tent, the table and its utensils, the pure lampstand and all its fittings, and the altar of incense, the altar of burnt offering and all its utensils, and the laver and its stand, the service vestments, the herbs together with frankincense. I have my screen covered up then, I'm sorry. Can I stop there and let someone?
Okay, we're at verse
35, I think. Yeah.
yes, we're at chapter 31, we're at verse 9. So I'll just finish that portion. The altar of burnt offering and all its utensils and the laver and its stand, the service vestments and sacral vestments of Aaron the priest, and the vestments of his sons for their service as priests, as well as the anointing oil and the aromatic incense for the sanctuary. Just as I have commanded you, they shall do. June, would you like to continue there, verse 12 of chapter 31?
Thank you, Rabbi. And the Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelite people and say, nevertheless, you must keep my Sabbaths, for this is a sign between me and you. Have consecrated you. You shall keep the Sabbath, for it is holy for you. He who profanes it shall be put to death. Whoever does work on it, that person shall be cut off from among his kin. 6 days may work be done, but on the seventh day there shall be a Sabbath of complete rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does work on the Sabbath day shall be put to death. The Israelite people shall keep the Sabbath, observing the Sabbath throughout the ages as a covenant for all time. It shall be a sign for all time between me and the people of Israel. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he ceased from work and was refreshed. When he finished speaking with him on Mount Sinai, he gave Moses the 2 tablets of the pact, stone tablets inscribed with the finger of God.
Thank you so much, June. Dave, would you like to continue at the very start of chapter 32?
When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, the people gathered against Aaron and said to him, come, make us a god who shall go before us. For that fellow Moses, the man who brought us from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has happened to him. Aaron said to them, you men take off the gold rings that are on the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me. And the people took off the gold rings that were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. This he took from them and cast in a mold and made them into a molten calf. And they exclaimed, "This is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it, and Aaron announced, "Tomorrow shall be a festival of God." Early next day, the people offered up burnt offerings and brought sacrifices of well-being. They sat down to eat and then rose to dance. Adonai spoke to Moses, "Hurry down, for your people whom you brought out of the land of Egypt have acted basely. They have been quick to turn aside from the ways that I enjoined upon them. They have made themselves a molten calf and bowed low to it and sacrificed to it, saying, 'This is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt.'"
Thank you, Dave. Jim, would you like to continue at verse 9?
Thank you, Rabbi. God further said to Moses, "I see that this is a stiff-necked people. Now let me be, that my anger may blaze forth against them, and that I may destroy them and make you a great nation." But Moses implored Lord his God, saying, "Let not your anger, O Lord, blaze forth against your people, whom you delivered from the land of Egypt with great power and with a mighty hand. Let not the Egyptians say, it was with evil intent that he delivered them, only to kill them off in the mountains and annihilate them from the face of the earth. Turn from your blazing anger and renounce the plan to punish your people. Remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, how you swore to them by yourself and said to them, I will make your offspring as numerous as the stars of heaven, and I will give to your offspring this whole land of which I spoke, to possess forever." And the Lord renounced the punishment he had planned to bring upon his people.
Oh, thank you so much, Jim. Let me invite Norm if you'd like to continue that, verse 15.
Thereupon Moses turned and went down from the mountain bearing the 2 tablets of the pact, tablets inscribed on both their faces. They were inscribed on the one side and on the other. The tablets were God's work, and the writing was God's writing, incised upon the tablets. When Joshua heard the sound of the people in its boisterousness, he said to Moses, "There is the cry of war in the camp." But he answered, "It's not the sound of the tune of triumph, or sound of the tune of defeat. It is the sound of song I hear." As soon as Moses came near the camp, he saw the calf and the dancing. He became enraged, and he hurled the tablets from his hands and shattered them at the foot of the mountain. He took the calf that he had made and burned it. He ground it into powder and strewed it upon the water, and so made the Israelites drink it. Moses said to Aaron, "What did this people do to you that you have brought such a great sin upon them?" Aaron said, "Let not my Lord be enraged. You know how this people is bent on evil. They said to me, 'Make us a god to lead us.' For that fellow Moses, the man who brought us from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has happened to him." So I said to them, "Whoever has gold, take it off." They gave it to me, and I hurled it into the fire, and out came this calf.
Thank you, Norm. Oh, this is what a great story. Here we go. Let me invite Justin and Linda if you'd like to continue at verse 25. And you'll need to unmute. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Verse 25,
Yes.
Moses saw the people that they were exposed, for Aaron had exposed them to be disgraced before their adversaries. So Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, "Whoever is for the Lord, let him come to me." And all the sons of Levi gathered around him. Wow. He said to them, "So said the Lord, the God of Israel, let every man place his sword upon his thigh and pass back and forth from one gate to the other in the camp. And let every man kill his brother, every man his friend, every man his kinsman." And the sons of Levi did according to Moses' word on that day. some 3,000 men fell from among the people. And Moses said, "Initiate yourselves today for the Lord, for each man with his son and with his brother, so that he may bestow a blessing upon you this day." It came to pass on the next day that Moses said to the people, "You've committed a grave sin, and now I'll go up to the Lord. Perhaps I'll obtain atonement for your sin." And Moses returned to the Lord and said, "Please, this people has committed a grave sin. They have made themselves a god of gold. And now, if you forgive their sin, but if not, erase me now from your book, which you've written." And the Lord said to Moses, "Whoever has sinned against me, him I will erase from my book. And now go, lead the people to the place of which I've spoken to you. Behold, my angel will go before you. But on the day I make an accounting of sins upon them, I will bring their sin to account against them."
Then the Lord struck the people with a plague because they had made the calf that Aaron had made. The Lord spoke to Moses, "Go ascend from here, you and the people you have brought up from the land of Egypt, to the land that I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I will give it to your descendants. I will send an angel before you, and I will drive out the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, to a land flowing with milk and honey, because I will not go up in your midst, since you are a stiff-necked people, lest I destroy you on the way." When the people heard this bad news, they mourned, and no one put on his finery. And the Lord said to Moses, "Say to the children of Israel, you are a stiff-necked people. If I go up in your midst for one moment, I will destroy you. But now leave off your finery, and I will know what to do with you." So the children of Israel divested themselves of their finery from Mount Horeb.
Thank you both so much. Let me invite Catherine if you'd like to continue at verse 7.
Thank you, Rabbi. Now Moses would take the tent and pitch it outside the camp at some distance from the camp. It was called the tent of meeting, and whoever sought the Lord would go out to the tent of meeting that was outside the camp. Whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people would rise and stand, each at the entrance of his tent, and gaze after Moses until he had entered the tent. And when Moses entered the tent, the pillar of cloud would descend and stand at the entrance of the tent while he spoke with Moses. When all the people saw the pillar of cloud poised at the entrance of the tent, all the people would rise and bow low, each at the entrance of his tent. Adonai would speak to Moses face to face, as one man speaks to another, and he would then return to the camp. But his attendant Joshua, son of Nun, a youth, would not stir out of the tent. Moses said to Adonai, "See, you say to me, lead this people forward, but you have not made known to me whom you will send with me. Further, you have said, I have singled you out by name, and you have indeed gained my favor. Now, if I have truly gained your favor, Pray let me know your ways, that I may know you and continue in your favor. Consider, too, that this nation is your people. And he said, I will go in the lead and will lighten your burden. And he said to him, Unless you go in the lead, do not make us leave this place. For how shall it be known that your people have gained your favor, unless you go with us, so that we may be distinguished, your people and I, from every people on the face of the earth? And the Lord said to Moses, I will do this thing that you have asked, for you have truly gained my favor, and I have singled you out by name. He said, Oh, let me behold your presence. And he answered, I will make all my goodness pass before you, and I will proclaim before you the name Adonai, and the grace that I grant, and the compassion that I show. But, he said, you cannot see my face, for man may not see me and live. And Adonai said, See, there is a place near me. Station yourself on the rock, and as my presence passes by, I will put you in a cleft of the rock and shield you from my hand until I have passed by. Then I will take my hand away, and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen.
Oh, thank you so much, Catherine. Robert, would you like to read a little bit? We're at the very start of chapter 34.
Yes, thank you. And the Lord said unto Moses, Hew thee 2 tables of stone like unto the first, and I will write upon these tables the words that were in the first tables, which thou breakest. And be ready in the morning, and come up in the morning unto Mount Sinai, and present thyself there to me in the top of the mount. And no man shall come up with thee, neither let any man be seen throughout all the mount, neither let the flocks nor herds feed before that mount. And he hewed 2 tables of stone like unto the first. And Moses rose up early in the morning, and went up unto Mount Sinai as the Lord had commanded him, and took in his hand the 2 tables of stone. And the Lord descended in the cloud, and stood with him there, and proclaimed the name of the Lord. And the Lord passed by before him, and proclaimed, the Lord God, merciful and gracious, long-suffering and abundant in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, and that will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, and upon the children's children, unto the 3rd and to the 4th generation. And Moses made haste and bowed his head toward the earth and worshiped. And he said, If now I have found grace in thy sight, O Lord, let my Lord, I pray thee, go among us, for it is a stiff-necked people, and pardon our iniquity and our sin, and take us for thine inheritance. And he said, Behold, I make a covenant before all thy people. I will do marvels such as have not been done in all the earth, nor in any nation. And all the people among which thou art shall see the work of the Lord, for it is a terrible thing that I will do with thee. Observe thou which I command thee this day. Behold, I drive out before thee the Amorite, and the Canaanite, and the Hittite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite. Take heed to thyself, lest thou make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land whither thou goest, lest it be for a snare in the midst of thee. But ye shall destroy their altars, break their images, and cut down their groves. For thou shalt worship no other God. For the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. Lest thou make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, and they go a whoring after the gods, and do sacrifice unto their gods, and one call thee, and thou eat of sacrifice. And thou take of their daughters unto thy sons, and their daughters go a whoring after their gods, and make thy sons go a whoring after their gods. Thou shalt make thee no molten gods. The feast of unleavened bread shalt thou keep. 7 days thou shalt eat unleavened bread, as I commanded thee, in the time of the month of Abib. For in the month Abib thou camest out from Egypt.
Oh, Robert, thank you so much. Let me invite Deborah, if you'd like to read a little bit starting at verse 19.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Every first issue of the womb is mine. From all your livestock that drop a male as firstling, whether cattle or sheep. But the firstling of an ass you shall redeem with a sheep. If you do not redeem it, you must break its neck. And you must redeem every firstborn among your sons. None shall appear before me empty-handed. 6 days you shall work, but on the 7th day you shall cease from labor. You shall cease from labor even at plowing time and harvest time. You shall observe the feast of weeks, of the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering at the turn of the year. 3 times a year all your males shall appear before the sovereign Lord, the God of Israel. I will drive out nations from your path and enlarge your territory. No one will covet your land when you go up to appear before Adonai your God 3 times a year. You shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with anything leavened, and the sacrifice of the feast of Pesach shall not be left lying until morning. The choice first fruits of your soil you shall bring to the house of Adonai your God. You shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. And Adonai said to Moses, write down these commandments, for in accordance with these commandments, I make a covenant with you and with Israel. And he was there with Adonai 40 days, 40 nights. He ate no bread and drank no water. And he wrote down on the tablets the terms of the brit, of the covenant, the 10 commandments.
Thank you so much, Deborah. And whoever's on the iPhone, would you like to read a little bit? We're on verse 29. Okay, then I'll pick it up there at verse 29. So Moses came down from Mount Sinai, and as Moses came down from the mountain bearing the 2 tablets of the pact, Moses was not aware that the skin of his face was radiant, since he had spoken with God. Aaron and all the Israelites saw that the skin of Moses' face was radiant, and they shrank from coming near him. But Moses called to them, and Aaron and all the chieftains in the assembly returned to him, and Moses spoke to them. After all the Israelites came near, and he instructed them concerning all that God had imparted to him on Mount Sinai. And when Moses had finished speaking with them, he put a veil over his face. Whenever Moses went in before God to speak with God, he would leave the veil off until he came out. And when he came out and told the Israelites what he had been commanded, the Israelites would see how radiant the skin of Moses' face was. Moses would then put the veil back over his face until he went in to speak with God again. And that's our entire Torah portion for the week. Thank you so much, everyone, for vocalizing it and bringing it out into our presence with your own voice. I'd like to share with you a bit of focus study about it. If you have a copy of the study sheet, I invite you to take it out at this time. So this is this climactic moment that has to do with the sharing of these tablets. And what I focused on this year in my study of the portion was how it opens. And what's interesting is the way the translation, at least the translation that's in my book, renders the Hebrew, and what I saw within the Hebrew. So our very first verse from chapter 30, verse 11, in my edition, the translation reads, God spoke to Moses saying, when you take a census of the Israelite people. So there, the Hebrew itself reads, Ki Tisa et Rosh B'nai Yisrael. which literally means when you raise up the heads of the children of Israel. So perhaps we can understand how idiomatically this verb to raise up a head gets rendered as the taking of a census, the counting of heads. But I focus on the kind of the literal implication of this notion of the elevation of the head. And when I focused on that, I looked over the arc of our narrative in this week's portion. And this is what I came up with in number 2 on our study sheet. There is this instruction to elevate the Israelites. And then immediately after that, we have this regression that's acted out by the Israelites in terms of the worshiping of the golden calf. And that regression is then followed by a shattering of these tablets, a shattering of these instructions. And that then is followed by a new set of instructions, a reimagining of what this is, these divine words are all about. And when I put all that together, what I got was this is really a key moment when Torah is trying to teach what freedom is all about. And freedom ultimately has to do with an uplifting of oneself, a transformation of oneself. So I'd like to explore a little bit about how our tradition and others as well understand this moment. So if you will, the props that are used to convey this notion of shattering and transformation and a new reimagining of what it means to be a human being in terms of one's responsibility and what freedom is all about are, of course, these 2 tablets. And what's interesting to be aware of in the language is that there is a subtle shift in terms of the authorship of these 2 tablets. So on number 3 on the study sheet, the first set of tablets, it says, the tablets were the work of God, and the writing was God's writing. The first tablets are described as being inscribed themselves by the hand of God. Those tablets are shattered. Those tablets, it seems, do not survive contact with this reality. Those tablets are not the ones that endure and end up being the ones to guide the Israelites on the rest of their journey. There's a second set of tablets, and number 4, carve 2 tablets of stone like the first, and I will inscribe upon them. God saying that God will inscribe upon them. When we read carefully, we notice it says, and Moses wrote down on the tablets. So it appears that the second set of tablets are actually bear the human imprint, the human initiative. And those are the ones that survive as a source of guidance along the way. So there's a fascinating understanding of what the significance of that, if you will, this new source of human initiative in the crafting of these words. So here is a lovely midrash about this verse from Shemot Rabbah, which is the name of the midrash. And it reads, it imagines, it's of course written by rabbis, and it imagines God saying to Moses, after his having smashed that first set of tablets, do not grieve about the first tablets. They only contain the 10 commandments. In the second tablets, there will also be halacha, laws, midrash, agadah. And then, interestingly enough, this midrash goes on to quote from Ecclesiastes by saying, it is written, to everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. When I looked at that midrash, I I got a completely different picture of what is transpiring and perhaps what is embedded in this lesson that's in this week's Torah portion. Because this notion of halacha, which is the interpretation of laws that the rabbis crafted over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years through their discussions with one another, and then midrash, these uh, stories that are told to fill in uh, spaces within the text that cry out for some kind of greater explication, and agadah, storytelling, which are designed to expound upon the text that we see. So all of those, halacha, midrash, agadah, these are all human interpretation, human creativity, and human imagination. And so this midrash is saying that is what is going to be contained on the second set of tablets. That is what is going to sustain you. That is what is going to survive within this realm of that in which you're journeying. So the rabbis take this notion of the responsibility for exercising human initiative, human creativity, and human imagination. And this it really becomes the nourishment for the Jewish people for thousands of years, this level of the responsibility of human initiative, creativity, and imagination. And so on number 6 on our study sheet, from the Mishnah, one of the early rabbinic works that was reduced to writing about the year 200 or CE or so. They take this notion from our verse, and the tablets were the work of God, and the writing was God's writing. And the rabbis do something very interesting. They craft out of the word for graven, if you will, a new word. And they say, read not harum, which means graven, but read herum, which means freedom. So they have, if you will, they have homiletically transformed a term that's associated with the regressive practice of crafting a graven image, and they have refashioned it as indicating, no, what you are intended to do is move beyond that past practice that was embedded in you from your time in Egypt. And now what I am asking you to do is to expand and become a free, initiative, responsible people. So the word itself, harum, we actually encountered a kind of homophone of it, a word that sounds like it, built upon almost the same letters in this week's portion, when it says that Aaron took all the gold that was given to him and he fashioned it with a charat and then created the molten calf. So a charat is an engraving tool. So this word charat, charut, this notion of engraving, now the rabbis take up this responsibility they've been given to help transform things homiletically and creatively into this notion about freedom. So let me share with you one more commentary, and then we're going to look at this painting. And this is our final commentary is from Rav Kook, who was the first chief rabbi in the land of Israel in the 20th century, when it was still a British mandate. And he wrote this in one of his works. The redemption of the Hebrew slaves from Egypt required supernatural intervention, a divine rescue from above, itaruta de Eila, an awakening from above. But the future redemption will take place within the laws of nature. It will emanate from the stirring of the human heart, itaruta delatata, an awakening from below. the Jewish people will rise from their exilic slumber, step by step, without overriding the laws of nature, so that even the beneficiary of the miracle is unaware of the great miracle that is unfolding. Then our future redemption will not be in haste, but will advance steadily like the ever-spreading light of daybreak. Rav Kook is talking then, he's making a distinction between this dramatic transformation that happens all at once, which he ascribes to a divine intervention from without. He says sometimes, as in the case of the rescuing the Israelites from Egypt, sometimes that's necessary. But that's the extraordinary. That's not really what will cause us as a people to transform ourselves into the human beings that we're meant to be. That has to come from within the human being themselves. And that, I think, is what he means by that's what the elevation of the people is all about. Not that someone from outside us is going to make us greater. We ourselves will make us greater. And it happens not all at once, it happens over time. Then our future redemption will not be in haste, but will advance steadily like the ever spreading light of daybreak. So with that, if we'd like to take a look at our painting, this is by Monet. It's of the train station, La Gare Saint-Lazare, which was this magnificent structure that was built in mid-late 19th century in Paris. And Monet did a series of 12 of these in 1877 and exhibited, we think, about 8 of them at the Impressionist exhibition in 1877. And what they demonstrate, as most of the work of the Impressionists did, a sharp break from and challenge to classical art, which had dominated the art world for hundreds of years. So classical art was that art which was bounded by approved standards of beauty, approved standards of appropriate subject matter. And also it conveyed a sense that what is true and beautiful is an eternally fixed ideal. The Impressionists come along and instead they embrace the fleeting, the transient, the subjective. And the emphasis for the Impressionists is not on that which is static and supposedly eternally true, but that which is dynamic. And so this poses a great challenge aesthetically, socially, politically, and even economically to the world at the time. So here is in the painting itself, dominating the scene are 3 locomotives, engines of power and movement. Their steam speaks of industry and a restless energy. They are objects that are not going to stay in one place for very long. Their purpose is to transport, to break the boundaries of settled place. And overpowering even the mighty engines, though, even overpowering the substantial built brick buildings that are in the background and the massive structure of steel and glass that's overhead, are images of steam and light. They swirl about, wrapping all that is material, both machine and building and human alike, within their intangible grip. And all that becomes dematerialized within their transitory breaths. So Monet's image is a statement not about the enduring and permanent power of industry. It pays homage to the moment, nothing more. For him, as well as for all the Impressionists, the transiency of time, the dynamics of light, the subjective experience of the artist upon any setting, those were the real subjects of the Impressionists. And I want to suggest that This is, in fact, what our Torah portion is sharing with us, is that to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. Everything within Judaism, everything that Judaism is teaching us, that Torah is teaching us, is that everything is in motion, everything is dynamic, everything is contextual. And the only way we can achieve freedom is not to wait to receive authority from the outside, but to exercise our God-given right and power to be interpretive, creative, and imaginative. If we do that, we'll write our way into the promised land and be like the ever-spreading light of daybreak. And with that, I'd love to know what you experienced and you felt in the course of our journey this evening. If you raise your hand, I'd love to call upon you. Robert, please, and then Catherine. And please unmute, Robert. Thank you.
I'll be courageous. I didn't want the evening to end without, at least somebody. So, this thing that you mentioned in the Baha'i writings, it says, arise and struggle. And it's such a beautiful concept because we struggle against ourselves. And we saw the Jewish people struggling against themselves. But yet they arose. They arose through the help of Moses. You mentioned beauty. I know this is an aside, but I've never seen a truly happy face that was not beautiful, no matter if that person were in their 90s or 3-year-old. And that's where beauty relies. And before I get to my real comments, I loved reading your commentary where you said transitory breaths. That was just beautiful, the language. I just love that language. Well, I want to start out with something that already has been said. So it seems redundant. For everything, there is a time. I would say that the tablets are the same. And I think the sequence for me, as I look at it, the sequence of the first two being broken, the second two being retained, shows the mercy of God exceeds his wrath, number one. Number two, the tablets were given, as I understand, according to the will of God and the capacity of the Jewish people and humanity, specifically the Jewish people, to understand at that time. And within the space of the time of Moses going to the mountain with the first set and the second set, their capacity hadn't changed. So I would say it's a symbol of the grace of God. And also, as I quote the Baha'i writings a lot because that's my framework, where Baha'u'llah says, and you've heard me say this before, the greatness of his mercy surpasseth the fury of his wrath. And I've seen that. I think we've seen this throughout the Torah. And then there's something else. The image that came to my mind as you were talking about humanity, and I think I'm going to write this poem because I love the language, and it's humanity dancing on the stage of time. The human nature doesn't change. The desire for love, for sin, it's all basic. It doesn't change over centuries. What changes is the stage. And we're dancing on that stage of time. And yes, socially, intellectually, spiritually, there's more that has come down. But it's how we dance on it. We always have that free will. And who are the dance partners? It's me and everything else. It's what I see, what I hear, what I believe, what I think, what I love. Oh, there we go. What I love, because listen, everything starts here in the heart. It goes to the head, the mouth, the hands, all starts with the heart. And I think that was all I wanted to say, actually. I probably spent too much time, but lovely, lovely evening. This section of the Torah has so much. And Here it is. The gold goes back into the water and he has them drink the water. It's like an image of, here, taste what your hands have wrought. You see how bitter the essence is? You see the image you imagine that was temporal, but the reality is poison? Drink what your hands have wrought. Beautiful evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And I love you're introducing this notion about dancing, which is fascinating because, of course, one of the climactic points is a dancing, right? In this week's chapter, and I guess it is all a matter of there is a desire to dance, to celebrate, and to connect and to create community in that kind of way. And maybe there's some lesson in there about it may depend upon which of these urges is coming forward in the course of that dancing and how we're dancing. So and then you got me to thinking about all the introduction to dancing that the Impressionists offered up. Of course, we know about Degas and his focus on dancers, but there were a number of other Impressionists who painted scenes of people dancing, and that probably was in itself was considered heretical within the art world to paint pictures of just people just doing something as commonplace and as sensual as dancing like that. So thank you for introducing that whole notion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Catherine, please.
Yeah, I had a different reading this time of Moses shattering the tablets. The first time I read it, or in the past, it's always disturbed me that Moses did that. That he just sort of shattered everything that had been laid out, lost his patience, and I saw it as an act of impatience. But this time I realized that he couldn't bring the tablets because there was no context of reception for them. Without the people's acceptance, there can be no mediation. And so what really brought that into the foreground was that we have these conversations between Adonai and Moses at the tent of meeting. So in a way, it's sort of performing this possibility of dialogue that had been hidden from the people in the first trip to the mountain. And so it's sort of like demonstrating the possibility of dialogue. And then we have the receptiveness of the people and the possibility that Moses can bring the tablets.
Catherine, you've opened up for me a whole new way of understanding this material. What you've done for me is basically help me to see that authority that is imposed from without is not a liberating authority.
Mm-hmm.
And there needs to be some synchronicity, some capacity for the people to assimilate and identify with these instructions in order for it to be a liberating source of authority. And you also reminded me that the very last bit of commentary that the medieval commentator Rashi has in Torah is in the book of Deuteronomy, and it has to do with Moses's recounting the smashing of the tablets. And Rashi's commentary is imagining that God says, Yasher Koach, Moses, for smashing those tablets. Congratulations to you for doing that. That was a good thing to do, indicating that somehow that smashing of that imposed authority was something that was not going to be part of the liberation movement that this whole story is about. it was going to merely be a supplanting of another external imposed authority, coercive authority, and that there needs to be some kind, as you're describing, some kind of synchronicity between the readiness of the people to absorb it, assimilate it, understand it, in order for it to be a source of authority that liberates rather than coerces people. So thank you so much. Beautiful. Let me invite Norm, please, and then Richard. And go ahead and unmute Norm. Be great.
Unmuted. Okay. This really isn't fair. I need several days to get my thoughts together, but I have to do it in just a couple of minutes. So this may be kind of schizophrenic. I thought it was really interesting that you started off by inviting us to this day-long retreat, which is going to be marked by learning, probably prayer, and artistic creativity, which is exactly what is highlighted in the beginning of the Parsha, with Bezalel being called upon, and also an invitation to anyone who is creative to pitch in and have part of this. So I thought the timing of that was really interesting. Smashing the tablets always has gotten my attention. They're seeing something not unbalanced, but it's certainly energetic about it. I look upon in this parsha, I ask the question, what are the things that happened? What are the things that people did that made God happy and that made God angry? And when Moses was talking with God, God was pleased with that and moved forward. When the people made the golden calf, God was very, very angry. But this height of destruction, of destroying the tablets that God had written, God with God's own hand. I mean, these days, if you drop a Torah, it's a major catastrophe, and there's lots of things you have to do. Torah, which is written by people, but here this tablets which were made by God, Moses shatters them, and I won't say that God doesn't care, but it's not something that God is unhappy about. I think that dovetails into the discussion which you were developing before about the fact that the tablets that the people need are not a tablets that's handed down from on high, but one which comes from human hands.
You know, Norm, you also got me to thinking this is that that first set of tablets, it's described as they were inscribed on the back and the front. And so when you think about that, and you think about a stone tablet being inscribed that way, somehow the letters need to be suspended in midair almost. I mean, it's outside of our realm of what is even possible. Whereas that's not the way the second set of tablets are described.
Yeah.
So even the structure of the two tablets, one seems to have come from a realm outside of human experience, and the second set arises from within a realm that is more physically comprehensible and imaginable and possible. So
I heard that Maimonides said, "Don't throw away the piece of paper until you've written on both sides." And I think this is where he got that idea.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you. So let me call upon Richard here. Yeah.
Thank you, Rabbi. Your last thing you spoke about really tickled me. But my notes through the time here are saying that freedom, it's all about understanding the context. It's all about being able to tolerate ambiguity and make a choice and allow the light to shine through the ambiguity. And freedom is not so much about being unrestricted. We ate the fruit of the tree and of good and evil, so we know what it is, and we have to digest that. And the freedom is to take responsibility for making those kinds of choices. And it's the freedom of accessing or having the light that God created for the first thing at all, which is truth, to come through us. And we need to take responsibility for allowing that to come into our hearts so it goes into the community. And we have the power to do that, and it's our freedom and responsibility. But at the very end, when you talked about them not having to go up against the people who are creating the laws. And that's exactly what the Haftorah is about today. And just read you just this Moses confronts the people, and here it is Elijah in the Book of Kings. Elijah's courage and defense of ordinary folk against predatory authority made him a legendary hero of popular tradition. So we don't just listen to the oligarchs or the monarchs. We have the freedom to have our own political ideas and the freedom to look at the context in which we're arised to take a look at a God or whatever it is. And I was just really struck by how you went right there.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. And so much this discussion and what others have raised as well reminds me of the whole rabbinic notion about authority, which is that rabbis have authority only to the extent that a community is willing to accept their points of view. That this is not a hierarchical structure where we have positions that impose authority on unwilling people, so that we have these communities in which people, in a sense, get to gravitate towards and empower people to help guide along the way. And so it is why, in many ways, I think, just to maybe end on this note, in which much of the world has always felt quite threatened by Judaism. And I don't think it's primarily because for a theological reason. I think it's because the Jewish way of life is one that promotes diversity of thought, multi-perspectival points of view, multi-vocality, expressing different points of view, and that lines of authority exist only to the extent that people convey the people's authority to those who are helping to make decisions and provide guidance. And I think that is what has threatened much of the world. And to return to Rav Kook's point, which is, I think, the really uplifting way to cohere our time together, which is, after all, how the whole Torah portion begins. When you raise up the heads of the people of Israel, when you elevate them, it has to do with not because they are now looking at a king and seeking the king's guidance. The elevation has to do with an unleashing of a force within the heart of each person who is transforming themselves, not merely because they are now free from some kind of chains that have kept them bound on the outside, but because they have discovered the power that they have been born with to be conveyors of the divine value of love, community, and responsibility. And I'm so very grateful to every week study with people who are helping to create that kind of love, responsibility, and community in the world. God bless you all. I'm so very grateful. Be well, everyone. I look forward to our next gathering.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
Rabbi,
you.
Rabbi, can I ask you a question?
Yes, Nora.
Where did you the thought that rabbis lead to the extent that people are willing to engage and follow. Is that your observation? Did you read it somewhere?
That's what I've assimilated through 70 years plus of living in a Jewish world and a Jewish life. And that's always been clear. This because Judaism is not a hierarchical religion, you know, and it and has never been uh, a monolithic religion. There have always been, it's primarily been communities of people who have their own customs uh, and their own ways of doing things, and this has always been respected across communities. So,
Thank you. I,
okay,
I I was curious where that came from. I agree. It's interesting.
fantastic. Be well, everyone. God bless you. Thank you so much.
We'll